case. We're hearing from the judge in the sentencing of Jennifer and James Crumbley, the parents of Ethan Crumbley, who was convicted in the school shooting at Oxford, Michigan.
Louder and was ignored. No one answered, and these two people should have and sure didn't. Mr. Crumbley, it's clear to this court that because of you, there was unfettered access to a gun or guns, as well as ammunition in your home. You characterized yourself as a martyr and threatened the well-being of the prosecutor. Mrs. Crumbley, you glorified the use and possession of these weapons. Your attitude toward your son and his behaviors was dispassionate and apathetic. Your response to school staff after a 12-minute meeting was, "Are we done here?" During your trial, you announced that you wouldn't do anything different. I understand that that might have been misinterpreted, but it did cut the victims deep. Because of both of your actions and inaction, among many, many other things, the world is missing out on a top college university will miss out on Tate's star quality football skills. I met Raina, who's wise beyond her years, and she's told us that among many, many other things, community will be denied Hannah's kindness, creativity, and sense of humor. Among many, many other things, the world will miss is Madison's kind and loving soul and the light that reflected her beauty both inside and out. Although a hero in death because of his organ donations that helped so many, we will never know where Justin, an excellent student with vast skills and interests, described as a mentor and a leader, would have left his giant imprint. The impact statements given here and the written statements provided to the court describe the cataclysmic impact the deaths of these children have had on their children. With regard to each defendant, this court has spent night and day thinking about this case, as you can imagine. I've prayed about this case, I've thought about this case, and I've considered the possibility for rehabilitation, the need to protect society, the penalty appropriate to the conduct and goal of deterring others from similar conduct. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation reports. I am, of course, sadly familiar with the facts and circumstances of these cases, as well as those surrounding each defendant. The advisory sentencing guidelines in this matter do not capture the catastrophic impact of the acts or inaction in these matters. The guidelines do not take into account the complete lack of insight both defendants have for their behavior to this very day. The guidelines do not account for the severity of the circumstances in this matter. The guidelines ignore the survivors, including shooting victims Phoebe Arthur, Elijah Mueller, Riley Franz, Kylie Osage, John Asciutto, Molly Darnell, and Aiden Watson. They were deeply wounded, both physically and emotionally. In addition to the 7 wounded, each of the defendants' gross negligence has caused unimaginable suffering to hundreds of others as a result of what happened that day. Each act or inaction created a ripple effect. Therefore, an out-of-guidelines sentence is appropriate and proportional. The court uses the useful tool of the legislative guidelines, which embody the principles of proportionality, while also taking into account the nature of the offense and the background of each defendant. I believe that the following sentences would be in the best interest of justice and are reasonable and proportionate to the seriousness of the matter and the circumstances surrounding each defendant. With regard to Jennifer Crumbley, it is the sentence of this court, Ms. Crumbley, that you serve 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections. You will have credit for 858 days. State costs are $272. There's a crime victims' rights fee of $130. You and your agents may not have any contact with the families of Madison Baldwin, Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling. I will issue another ruling with regard to contact with your son, the shooter. Excuse me. As to defendant James Crumbley, it is the sentence of this court that you serve 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections, that you receive credit for 858 days, that you pay state costs in the matter of $272, that there is a crime victim's rights fee of $130, that you or your agents have no contact with the families of Madison Baldwin, Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling. Ms. Wheeler, have I left anything out with regard to sentencing? No restitution has been requested by any of the families at this time, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I would like to advise both defendants that you are entitled to appellate review of your conviction and sentence, including that the sentence exceeds the guideline range. This is done by filing a claim of appeal by right, or when you are not entitled to file a claim of appeal by right, an application for leave to appeal. If you cannot afford to hire an attorney to represent you on appeal, and you request an attorney may be appointed for you. You may request an attorney by completing the request for appointment of attorney section of the form that will be provided for you, and by returning the form to this court or to the Michigan Assigned Counsel System at the address on the form. If you wish to preserve your automatic right to appeal, the form must be received within 42 days after sentencing. If you do not submit the form within 42 days from today, you may still file an application for leave to appeal if the form is received within 6 months after sentencing. Do each of the defendants acknowledge receipt of their appellate rights?
James acknowledges receipt, Your Honor. He's completing the form as we speak.
Your Honor, my client is as well. Would the court like the forms here, or would you prefer us to?
It doesn't matter.
We have been listening to the quite historic sentencing for James and Jennifer Crumbley. Both received 10 to 15 years in prison, but they have more than 800 days off of time served, which, according to my calculations here, is just over 2 years and 2 months each, meaning that they could still spend a significant time in prison. Nikki Battiste continues here with us in Studio 57. Nikki, you've been following this case. What was the sentence that we were expecting today? How close does this get to that? Is this kind of maximum?
I think it's hard to say what anyone was expecting. I think that people felt the judge could send a message today, and she did. She minced no words. She talked about how much she, Judge Cheryl Matthews, thought about this case. What struck me is there are state guidelines for sentencing, and I believe in this case it might have been around 8 years for a sentence. And the judge was talking about how those state guidelines for sentencing in this case did not take into account James and Jennifer's account, what they did, their negligence, she said. And she also talked about the unimaginable suffering of the victim. So she went as far as she could today, the judge, and I think that her message will be heard loud and clear across the country. Yeah. And hopefully parents will pay attention to their children across the board and their mental health.
I want to bring in also Donte Mills, who joins us. Donte, from what I understand, the maximum, and as Nikki was saying, was 15 years. That's what we walked into today. Now she's sentencing, the judge is sentencing both parents to 10 to 15 with credit for just over 2 years, 2 months. What does 10 to 15 years mean? What happens now?
This is groundbreaking. This means that the judge wanted to make a statement and make it absolutely clear that they should be punished to the highest extent possible. She talked about going beyond the guidelines in this case, and she did. But what this means is these people were sentenced to 10 to 15 years for essentially being bad parents. And that's what this means. So you have to look at where does this lead us as a country? Now will prosecutors go after parents not only for mass shootings, but say individual murders, or if their child robs somebody or steals something, will they be responsible if they did not take enough action to prevent their child from doing that or recognize that their child was capable of it? I think this is a groundbreaking sentence. I think there's absolutely going to be implications on both sides. Hopefully parents pay more attention. But it does open up prosecutors to be able to not only prosecute the person who committed the crime, but the person responsible for the person who committed the crime. And this is the first time that this kind of thing is happening in this country. And there's going to be a lot of fallout from this.
Well, That brings me, I kind of, before I ask you the next question, I kind of want to remind viewers of some of the details in this case. I mean, he had expressed in journals, and Nikki, you can tell me a little bit about more about this, but I recall that he had shown signs of needing mental health assistance. The day of the shooting, the school called the parents, showed them drawings that showed a gun, bodies with blood all over them, and a lot of other signs of violence that he, as I mentioned before, he went on the run. I mean, there were all of these signs. And so when we think about, will any parent now be held liable for the crimes of their child? Nikki, if you can walk us through some of those other very specific and alarming indications that they could have done something and why they're being charged for involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, Ethan Crumbley wrote in journals about, literally in capitals, needing help, struggling, suffering, feeling paranoia, seeing, I believe he said he told his mom he saw a demon in their house and clothes flying everywhere. Clear signs of some sort of mental instability. But I think what has always struck me in this case, and again, this judge took into consideration today, as you mentioned earlier, these parents tried to flee the state when they were first being looked at as, for potential criminal charges. These parents, yes, it was legal that James Crumbley bought his son a gun, and it was legal to take him to a gun range, but James Crumbley did not securely store the firearm, and that is how his son got it and took it to his school. But what has always troubled me in this case, and I think I'm positively what helped convict them, is that the school officials called in these parents and said, look what your son drew on this piece of paper today. As you said, a gun, bullets. He noted on it, he wrote blood everywhere. And he wrote
a drawing with a body.
My life doesn't matter, I believe was the other statement.
And a body with blood
like,
around.
And the school said, we think you should take him home. And they said no. And I think that is where that dismissing of school officials and concern is really the crux of this case. Because had they listened, there's a very good chance that all of those students would be alive and none would have been injured.
And I remember part of the defense, Jennifer Crumbley had said, well, I couldn't just take him to work or I couldn't take time off work. Well, they had her boss as a witness who said, no, she could have taken the time off. She could have brought him to work, so he didn't have to be on his own that day. And so there's a lot of these specific facts of the case that I think, if you're a parent out there just wondering if I miss some signs, will I be facing 15 years? Perhaps this is a very specific case. Donte, I want to bring you back in. Do you think that, given everything that we've said, they have a solid, either parent or both, case for an appeal?
I don't think so. I think the judge really thought this through. She made that clear. I also think the jury really thought this through. They had all of the facts that you just talked about, and a lot of those facts were alarming, that they did have an opportunity. They were called to the school, and they refused to take the child home. I don't think that there's going to be an appeals court that overrules the jury's reading of the facts here, and I think this verdict and this sentence is going to stand. We'll see how far this goes. I know the family talked about also looking at people in the school who had the same circumstances and saw the same things that day and really didn't do much about it. So we'll see if this goes further. But I think what's happened so far with these parents is going to stand.
Wow. I mean, this is just such a unique case. And I think the eyes of the nation and of parents all over, everywhere, are paying attention to this. And it's also, from the legal system, an effort, given that it's so hard to pass any kind of gun control law. So I imagine that weighs in, too. Thank you so much for joining us, Nikki and Donte. Thank you for your insights.